Reading with your kids.
Hocus pocus, alakazam, zimzalabim, shazam! Bienvenidos! Hi, my name is Jadley, and this is a magical edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. My amazing wonder dog, Augie, is here with me by my side, ready to welcome our guest today. This is a fantastic guest. Magic is one of my favorite things in the world. And our guest today is the author of My Magical Hat Rules. Her name is Debi Novotny. Before I wave my magical wand to get this episode on the road, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is sponsored by Mommy's Big Red Monster Truck by Allison Paul Klackwitz. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Every kid knows that mommies are the greatest. They feed us, they take care of us, and they love us with all of their hearts. But did you know that mommies are also so very, very cool? Well, one little boy sure does. His mommy drives a big red monster truck, and it is awesome. It bounces, it smashes, and takes him on amazing adventures all over the country. In her truck, they can do anything and go anywhere. And best of all, they do it together. Allison Paul Klackwitz's Mommy's Big Red Monster Truck. It's available on Amazon, and it is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus, written by Stephen Joseph and playfully illustrated by Andy Case. You know, reading with your kids is very often all about reading out loud with your kids. And what would make for a better read out loud book than a book that has 6 cranky relatives, 3 mean dinosaurs, and 1 very cranky Tyrannosaurus? This book tells the tale of how dinosaurs became extinct, and not in the life-ending meteor shower way that the paleontologists often cite. The Tyrannosaurus is so cranky, she makes all the other bigger, meaner dinosaurs disappear. That is, until she comes across the only dinosaur who is immune to her incessant complaining, the Tyrannosaurus. These 2 dinosaurs evolved into humans, and that's where cranky people come from. You know, the story is really great, and it's really funny, and your kids are just going to love listening to you pronounce Tyrannosaurus and Tyrannosaurus. Now, throughout the illustrated book, family members and dinosaurs humorously battle to have their best sources. Now, that's a Yiddish word for big, really big problems, including warts, alligator attacks, and brain tumors. I mean, poor cousin Dottie grew an entire forest on her feet. Oi! Now, we think the best part of this very funny book is that it's not just for cranky kids. As the storyteller says in the end, even mommies and daddies can be crankotankosaurus. Let me try that again. Even mommies and daddies can be a crankosaurus and a kvetchosaurus sometimes. As it turns out, everyone has a bit of Tyrannosaurus and Tyrannosaurus in him or her. The Last Surviving Dinosaur reminds readers to be mindful of when and how often they complain, a lesson from which all readers, young and old, can benefit. The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus by Stephen Joseph, is available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and many other sites where books are sold. And we also want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by the Queen Vernita Visitor Series by author Dr. Dawn Minge. This is a fun and educational series of 9 books that your families will absolutely adore. You are all going to love following the Queen and her 12 subjects as they explore a new and exotic region every new year. The Queen's subjects teach her all about stalagmites, sharks, seahorses, glaciers, volcanoes, and so much more. You're also going to learn about other people and differences in other people. As a special education teacher, Dr. Dawn's books touches on disabilities such as Down syndrome, Rett syndrome, cerebral palsy, deafness, visual impairments, and autism. This is a fantastic series that reminds kids that each and every kid is a human being, and regardless of our abilities or differences, we can all become friends. Pam Schneider has provided bright, colorful, and whimsical illustrations that complement the text. The Queen Vernita Visitor Series will make a great addition to any classroom or child's bookshelf. Check it out today. It's available on Amazon, The Queen Vernita Visitor Series by author Dr. Dawn Minge. Join us right now from Fountain Hills in Arizona. She is the author of a great series that I absolutely love. It's the Magic Hat series. Please welcome to the show, Debi Novotny. Deb, how are you?
I'm great, Jed. How are you?
I am wonderful. Waiting and looking forward to having a magical conversation with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on your Reading with Your Kids program. I love it. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, this is really great. Of course, being an educational magician, I love all things. Well, I don't love all things magic. I'll be honest with you. There's some magic that's kind of annoying and boring, but I love the way magic can really spark kids' imaginations. I just worked with a group of 5, 6, and 7-year-olds. The goal of my purpose being with them was to teach them how to do some magic. I don't know how much magic they actually learned, but they had such a great time doing it and being in the class. And magic is just one of those things that fascinates kids. And just if you want to catch a kid's attention, 9 out of 10 kids, magic is the way to do it.
I absolutely agree. That's the premise I went on when I wrote this book also. And I actually have a magic hat that I bring out with me on 2 author visits and a magic wand. And we put words in the hat and we pull words out of the hat and the kids read and they use the magic wand and they love it. I had one little boy, he goes, after the presentation, he goes, boy, I got to get me one of those hats. I could learn to read. It's so cute.
So
I love it.
So right now there are 2 books in the Magic Hat series and one on the way. Why don't we start at the beginning and talk about Magic Hat rules?
Okay. Well, my Magic Hat rules was the first book in the series, and it has 4 different stories in it. They're all using the same child, and she finds a magic hat. She wears it to school, and then her teacher teaches her a new reading rule. The first one is, some of the reading rules in that first book are vowel buddies, the bossy E, and short vowel sounds, and what E says when it's at the end of a small word like he, be, we, she. And it's all rhyming, so the kids get the idea of word families and patterns.
That's really important. And even though English is one of those languages where it doesn't always follow the rules, learning those rules, it's really important. It's a great foundation for kids as they're learning to read.
Exactly. I totally agree. And even as adults, we don't remember really how we learn to read. Most of us, we just know we read. Mm-hmm. Kids have to do it systematically, where they learn the smaller words and then they put the small words together to make big words, and we teach them in that way so that they can build on that foundation that you're speaking of. It's so important for not only for spelling and reading, but for as they get into the older grades when they're no longer learning to read, they're reading to learn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about you're a teacher, and my wife is a teacher, and she's entering her 31st or 32nd year. We don't really keep count. She gets mad when I mention how many years she's been teaching. But one of the things, we're talking about magic hats and rules and everything like that. One of the things that was challenging for her is the way public schools teach reading changes. It seems like it changes every 5, 6, 7, or 8 years. And the changes, why they're making change, doesn't all often make sense. Can you talk a little bit about that and how sometimes schools have gotten away from these kind of classic rules?
Absolutely. When I started teaching 20 years ago, I was in that arena where they were teaching more whole language, and that kids could learn the basic rules by reading rich literature, which I was part of that, and I loved the premise of that. Although what we were finding was that kids weren't actually learning the foundations of phonics just by reading the books. They just weren't learning the rules, basically. So what we did was, again, like you said, the pendulum swung back the other way, and then they started heavily teaching the phonics rules without the rich literature. And so what it really needs to be is both. You need to combine the phonics rules with the rich literature, because in order to get children to love to read, you have to have a type of story that interests them. And some of the phonics books are either too short, or they don't have that rich vocabulary that the children need in order to build their vocabulary foundation also. So there needs to be both. There needs to be a combination of both, and you cannot deny the fact that kids need to learn phonics. They need to learn how the words are put together, what the rules are, and like you said, the English language it's a difficult language to learn. So the more help we can give them in the beginning, the better off we are.
You know, as you're talking about that, now I definitely, I'm closing in on 100 years old, so you know, when I took my horse and buggy to school, I definitely remember learning phonics. But I discovered when I went to high school that there was I was the kids in my school at that time were part of an experimental program, and I don't remember what it was, but at some point they stopped teaching us English grammar rules. And we would learn how to write and express ourselves by reading. And I learned how to write very well and express myself very well and could read and understand. And so it wasn't a problem until I went to a classical high school, and I was expected to learn Latin. And at that time, knowing, understanding English grammar were very important. And I was sitting in the class clueless. I was great with the vocabulary and all of that kind of stuff. Thankfully, I had a very wise teacher who kind of noticed, you know, that I wasn't not doing the work. It's just I had no idea what I was trying to do. And so I kind of went into, I guess, elementary school grammar when I was in high school. But it can be frustrating. Thankfully, I survived, and thankfully I'm hoping that schools are kind of noticing that, hey, okay, we tried that. It wasn't perfect. We tried this. It wasn't perfect. Maybe now our school's coming together and using both.
You know, they are. We're teaching in a whole new way in a lot of areas. One of them, for instance, is that, and we've known this for years, and there's scientific proof that our brains are pattern-seeking devices. So we're teaching them mind mapping and using a lot of maps to engage their learning. So the purpose of the phonics, in my mind and in a lot of educators' minds, is that they learn the patterns and the rules of some of these words, such as the word families. In My Magic Hat Goes to School, which is the second book that goes to My Magic Hat Rules, it talks about the pattern of AY. When AY comes into the word, it says A, like play and today and Monday and all the different words that end with AY say A. Or when OW says O, snow and toe and things like that. So what kids need, what we were finding with children was that if they didn't understand the pattern and they were writing or doing something, trying to get their thoughts across, not just verbally but written like you were talking about, they would stop at the smaller words that they knew how to spell, but they wouldn't be adventurous and get into the big words because they would be stuck on how to spell the word, you know, and they didn't want to write a bigger word because just for lack of understanding how to spell the word. So the patterning is important with kids, and the patterns that they learn on how to create the words and just changing the first letter of the word and making a whole new word. They get that. They'll go, oh, I had one little girl one time say, she's like, I feel like I'm walking on the moon, because she just got it and it clicked. It's such a cute analogy. And I feel exactly like that feeling that they have because they struggle when they don't get that foundation, the phonics foundation. So they are doing both now. They are doing a lot of that. And I think that even more than ever, authors and writers, we understand that children need the creativity. They need the curriculum base, but they also need character development. So we're combining all those together to make interesting stories for kids to read.
Yeah. As you were just talking about changing that first letter to create a whole new word, that's, and that really is kind of magical. And so I love that you're using this, the magic hat to kind of teach that. And that you also mentioned a magical moment where something clicks in a kid's head, and it really is. You can almost hear the click go off, and
absolutely,
it's just an amazing feeling.
It is.
How can parents now? There are a lot of parents out there that are, they want to do the best for their kids. They want to be supportive for the kids, but I think there's some parents who are like, oh, but I didn't go to college, or I'm not a teacher, and I can't do this kind of stuff. What can you tell parents to kind of bolster up their confidence to, really be the best teacher that their child can have?
Well, I love this question because I would sit in parent-teacher conferences all the time and have that exact same question and asking for advice on what they can do with their kids and how can they get their kids excited about reading and all of that. And I would just say to them, and what I would say now and what I do say to parents that I meet when I'm doing author visits or author signings, I say, get out a whiteboard, get out a marker, take a book out that your child finds or that you go pick from the library or from a bookstore or something, and sit down with that book and read with your child. I love the whiteboards because, especially with the book I wrote, because the purpose would be to sit down and engage with your child and write words that you find in the book. Write the word hat. Change the first letter of the word hat. Change it to a B. Now what word did you make? Change the B to a C. Now what word did you make? And make it fun. And then you can even make it harder by saying, okay, now put that word in a sentence. Let's write a sentence about it, and let's draw a picture about it, because you're going to have children with all different types of intelligences. You're going to have kids that like to learn through music or visually or kinesthetically, and they can act it out. You have logical thinkers. You can do all kinds of things with books just by honing in on all the things that kids like, nature, anything like that they like in a book. You can use it for teaching. When I used my Magic Hat Rules, I had a little boy. He was actually only 1, and I opened the book, and his favorite picture, he was actually bilingual also, or Spanish speaking, and he really loved the picture of the apple, and he kept saying, apple, apple, apple. He was just repeating after me what I said was the name of the picture, and he knew what an apple was, so he loved it. He just kept saying it over and over, and so just teaching him through pictures was wonderful. Or when your child's learning to write their favorite word, which is their name, when they're writing their name, you can pick out the letters in their name and find that letter in the book. Like open the book and say, do you see the first letter of your name somewhere? Those kinds of things are important when you're just looking at letter recognition. And then you go gradually into letter sounds. And you really just do what the children are ready to do, and really model for them. When you're reading, just telling them to read is one thing, but when you sit down and read the book next to them or read with them, then you're saying that this is a fun thing to do. We enjoy doing this, and we can do it together. Look, I read, and you read too, and celebrate with books. It's fun.
Yeah, and it really is true. Many parents don't believe this. In fact, I hear all the time, "Oh, my kids don't want to be with me," or whatever. It's like, your kid, you are the most important person in your kid's life. And the kids want more than anything else. Just like you said, their favorite word is their name. The favorite people in their life are the parents, and that's whose attention they crave, that's whose approval they crave, and that's who they want to be like. So if you're sitting down and they see you reading, then they're much more likely to develop a love of reading.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you spend time at a bookstore, at a library, and they get a library card, and a lot of books are now related to movies. So it's a fun connection because kids love to watch movies, and again, they watch them over and over again, which same for a book. They love to read the same book over and over again. So if you have a good selection of books for your children that they'll read over and over again, and they might ask you 10, 20 times to read the same book over and over. And the fun part is watching them learn to read, because first they're just going to tell you the story. They're going to just make it up, basically, which is the first part of reading, and it's wonderful. And you just play along and you say, that's right. They're really just telling you the story. And then after that, they start picking up on some of the words, or, when you're driving around, they'll see things that are environmental print. They'll point things out like, oh, I know, like a cereal box or a name of a restaurant or something. They'll start pointing out the names, and then you're celebrating. You're like, oh, you read that. They may just recognize the sign or the logo, but they're still reading it and recognizing it.
Sure.
So that's a good celebration. I just had a parent tell me that last weekend when I was doing a reading at the Pueblo Grande Museum. She was telling me how amazed she was that her son was picking out all these signs as they were driving down the street. And I'm like, that's exactly right. And it's just so exciting. Like you said, it's so exciting to see that light bulb turn on, and when you see them actually reading, because it opens up a whole new world for them.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It empowers them. It gives them independence. It's so important because it really does. It gives them the keys to learning. That first, when they make that first connection, oh, that sign with the yellow kind of archy thing and red, and that's where I go and get greasy food. Oh yeah. But that's the start.
That's funny. That's the one I was thinking of. That's the same one I was thinking of.
It's all over the place. Here in Boston, it's the Dunkin' Donuts sign. But it's that's the start. That's the start where it's like, okay, when they get older and they want to learn how to do something, hopefully there's somebody there that can teach them. But if there isn't, they have the ability to go out and learn that thing.
That's right, exactly. And they feel successful, and it builds their confidence too. Just those little baby steps in beginning to read, and making it fun, like you said, and engaging, especially with the magic. Also, it's fun, like you've seen at your magic shows when you're teaching them an important message. You want them to pay attention, and you want them to remember it. And the more engaged you are, the higher level of retention they have. If you just sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil and have them write, that's one thing. But when you take out a book and you take out a hat or you take out a magic wand and you actively teach them, the level of retention goes to seriously up to 80 to 90%, rather than a worksheet or a workbook, you get about 10%. So while they have a place, they do workbooks and things, make it engage, or add it to something else, add it to something fun and spark their imagination. I love the magic part. I think that is such a great tool for kids. I do one magic trick when I go out to my readings, and you might know this one, but where the kids open up a banana, and I ask them, first I ask them how many letters are in the word hat, and we try to sound it out and spell it, and then we open the banana, and it falls into 3 pieces. And I had one little boy, he goes, oh my gosh, I saw it with my own eyes. I was like, exactly. But they're going to remember, I would teach them how to make coins into dollars with a magic change bag, putting the quarter in the change bag and turning it into a dollar bill. They're going to remember that because it happened with magic. So it was fun.
Yeah, no, you sold me. It's,
Well, my brother is a magician, and so he let me borrow a magic book. I asked him, I said, look, I really want to teach my kids with magic. And he's like, well, here, this is a great book for beginning magicians, or just little tricks that you can do that gets their attention. So it's a fun thing to do with teaching. And, with teaching is you're up on stage too. You're always trying to make the next best thing and changing up things so that it's fun to teach and it's fun to learn.
Well, you're talking about beginner's magic and how I have a cute little story. My son is one of these kids who, if he's not interested in the subject, forget it. You just can't can't get him. But if he is interested, he's laser focused. And we were at a magic convention, and there was one book that I would carry around in my suitcase when I would be on tour and I'd be bored, and I'd just take this book out. And it was a great book, a lot of simple tricks, but there was lots of them. And we're at this convention, and my son, who was familiar with the book, saw that the author of the book was at the convention. So he ran back to the hotel room, and he said, "Can I take it down and get it autographed?" I said, "Sure." He went down. The author was this magician from England called Nick Einhorn. And Nick was very kind, spent some time with my son. He signed it, and my then 9-year-old son came back. Spent the next 6 weeks learning every single one of the 200 tricks that were in the book. And was amazing. I mean, just great. So a friend of mine asked him to go and do some tricks at a dinner party they had. So my son is walking around to these different tables, and he's doing these really complicated card tricks. And they were great. They were tricks that I couldn't do. And but he wasn't getting any reaction from them. And he was so disappointed. He'd look at me, and I go, "Chris, do the world's fastest card trick, the trick that I taught you when you were like 5. And he goes, "No, that's simple. That's too simple. I'm way above that. There's no way I'm going to do that trick." And I said, "Okay." And so then he went around to some more tables, did some more knuckle-busting magic, and got no response. And I felt so bad because his heart was broken. And I finally just said, "Chris, please, just try it. I know it's beneath you, but just give it a shot." And it was just this very simple trick that had a very quick, magical moment. And it blew people away. And the rest of the time, he went around to all the tables, and he blew people away with this simple little trick. And he came back to me. He was really angry. He goes, "You were right." But the point of my sharing that story is if you're interested in teaching with magic, do the little things. The things that the kids get. If you're working with little kids, then you don't want to do something, some crazy mentalism for, college professors. You want to do something simple, something quick that they can get that's very visual, and will just give them that magic moment. And it really is a joy to do that with kids.
And that's a great story. I love that. I absolutely love that. And like you said, he learned it because he was so interested in it. Mm-hmm. He wanted to like relate to that. He could already relate to that because he's seen you do it. Mm-hmm. So you've already modeled a lot of that for him. And I just love that. My daughter learned to read because she wanted to do plays, and her first grade teacher told her, if you can, read the part in this play, you can do the play, and if anybody's absent and anybody else's part, you can do their part too. And so she memorized the whole entire play, Why Mosquitoes Buzz in People's Ears. And sure enough, she was a couple different parts that day because somebody was absent, and it was wonderful. But that really hooked her, because she liked to perform. So yeah, like you said, something will hook the kids, and they'll get interested in it, and then there's no stopping them. It could be sports, it could be magic, like you said, it could be theater, it could be poetry. There's just a whole gamut, and I think as us as adults and as society, we need to continue to keep kids excited about reading and keep putting out the good literature and allowing them to express themselves in whatever way they choose. Which I love the magic. Well, how he was so confident too to be able to go from table to table and do that, because that's, you're putting yourself out there. How old was he?
Yeah,
awesome.
He was probably at that time, I think he was 11 or 12. So we've talked a little bit. We've talked about My Magic Hat Rules. Have we also talked about My Magic Hat Goes to School?
My Magic Hat Goes to School. We talked a little bit about that one. Okay. That one has, again, 4 more reading rules, which was when AY says A, when OW right. says O at the end of a word, when Y says E, such as baby, and also when Y says I at the end of a word, like French fry or spy. So those kind of words. So it does the same rhyming pattern that the first book did, so it's predictable and the kids get comfortable reading the words. And at the beginning of every story, there's a picture of a tree with leaves and a hat on the branch, and in each leaf there's a word that follows that word family pattern. So they can be word detectives, and they can get out a magnifying glass and they can look for the words in the leaves and write the words down on their whiteboards. Again, it's very interactive, and it's meant to be a teaching tool that you could sit down and have fun with.
That's wonderful. Now, in the tradition of magicians, can we reveal a little bit about book 3?
Ooh, okay. Yes, I would love to. I really just picked up the illustrations yesterday for this third book coming out, and it is a humorous book called What Do You Do When the Couch Eats Your Shoe? And Other Things Too. And it was so much fun to write, and the illustrator Wendy Hill had a lot of fun illustrating the pictures. The couch evolved into a character that is, I will reveal a little bit that the couch does eat quite a few things, and the little boy in the story tries to find, or he is not trying to find the things, he's actually trying to find one thing and finds a lot of other things in the process. But that's probably all I can reveal about that. It's coming out I believe in the end of September, early October.
Wow, that's
this year.
We had one of those thing-eating couches in my home. Yeah,
I think we all do.
Yeah,
I do too.
I discovered I had bought a ruby and diamond tennis bracelet from my wife, and I found it in the couch. And I said, "When did you lose it?" She goes, "Oh, a while ago, but thank you for finding it."
Yeah, I have one of those couches too. Actually, one of my students came to school one day and told me that the couch had squished his toy. And I as a teacher, I write down all kinds of things that kids tell me, and a lot of the funny humor stories that I'm working on right now are stories that they have told me over the years that I just, quickly took note of and put in the back of my brain or wrote them down, and now they're all coming to fruition because I'm having time to write all of them, and I'm having a blast doing it. So it'll be fun.
That is awesome. Well, tell everybody where they can connect with you so they can find out more about Debi Novotny and the Magic Hat series.
Fantastic. I do have a website. It is www.mymagichatrules.com, and I do have a link there to buy the book. It's also available on Amazon and Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Powell's Bookstore, various places online. And My Magic Hat Goes to School is actually on its way here from the printer, and it should be here any day now. So once that gets here, I'll put that up on my website as well. And I'd love to autograph them and send them out to anybody who would like to order, or if they order online. And if I know you're in Boston and I'm in Arizona, but you never know who your listeners are, if they're anywhere close by. I have a book show in Payson on July 20th and various places throughout Arizona through the year, but I post them on my website. I love to meet kids. I love to meet the parents and talk to them about different ways to teach their kids to love to read. So I always love to meet my people.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yes,
We've had an
thank you.
awesome time talking today to the author of the My Magic Hat series, Debi Novotny. Deb, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed talking to you. I think this was a lot of fun, and I love your podcast. I've listened to several of them, and I'm so impressed by the quality of the authors and the experiences that people bring to their writing is wonderful.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We travel from the land of magic into the world of video games. Speaking with Mer Lafferty. She is the author of the first official Minecraft book, The Lost Journals. This really is a fascinating. I learned all about Minecraft, and I learned all about creating a story, a novel, out of blocks. And this game, and it's really cool. It's a fascinating conversation. You don't want to miss it. If you are the author of a great children's book, we would love to have you on the show. Being a guest is fun, it's easy, and it gives you the chance to tell thousands of people about your fantastic children's book. All you need to do is visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the contact button. Let my producer, Fatima, know all about your great book. We will let you know the next easy steps. We want to thank the people who made today's show so very wonderful. Debi Novotny. Please be sure to check out her book, My Magic Hat Goes to School. It is book 2 in my Magic Hat Rules series. We also want to thank our sponsors, Alice and Paul Clackworth. Check out her Mommy's Big Red Monster Truck, a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Dawn Minge, check out the Queen Vanita Visitor Series. And we also want to thank the author of The Last Surviving Dinosaurs, the Tyrannosaurus, Stephen Joseph. Check that book out. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and many, many other book-selling sites. I want to thank my amazing producer, Fatima Khan. Be sure to check Fatima's blog out on our website, readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all of the support that she gives me. And I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you so much for subscribing to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. And most of all, I want to thank you so much for making the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.